The traitorous alien bitches were to be exiled to the Earth they'd conquered. Mira and Tala stood at attention before High Commander Zorax, faces blank, spines rigid. The sisters had committed the gravest sin a Ferengi could, questioning their orders. And now they would pay the price. "You are a disgrace," Zorax spat, his eyes burning into them. "Failures like you are of no use to the glorious Ferengi Empire. But in my mercy, I grant you one final chance to prove your worth." He gestured to the view screen, which showed the miserable ball of dirt and water the humans called home. Though the Ferengi invasion had been swift and brutal, pockets of human resistance remained. They were like vermin, hard to stamp out completely. "We have reports of rebel scum amassing in one of their cities. You will go there, take on the guise of humans, and infiltrate their ranks. Find out their plans, their numbers, their leaders. Succeed, and perhaps you may earn a place among us once more. Fail." Zorax left the threat hanging. He didn't need to finish. Every Ferengi knew the penalty for failure. Mira and Tala landed in the midst of the human settlement, which teemed with more life and noise than any Ferengi city. Clothed in strange human garments, they made their cautious way through the chaotic streets, flinching at every shout and burst of raucous laughter. The aliens were baffled by the humans, who came in a bewildering array of shapes, sizes, and colors. On Ferenginar, conformity was law. Individuality was a crime. But here, diversity seemed celebrated. It made no sense. As they searched for signs of the resistance, Mira collided with a human male. She tensed, expecting anger, but the man just steadied her and smiled. "You all right there, miss? Gotta be careful in this crowd." Disarmed by his friendliness, Mira found herself talking with the human, Zachary. He was eager to show her around the city, and she was surprised to find herself drawn to his warmth and humor. Being with him felt nothing like being with a Ferengi male. But as her strange bond with Zach deepened, so did Mira's turmoil. What future could a Ferengi and a human possibly have? Her duty was clear. She had to find the rebels, even if every moment with Zachary pulled her further from that path. Then came the disastrous news. Commander Zorax was coming to Earth to oversee the search personally, and he would show no mercy to those in his way, human or Ferengi. Mira had to make a choice, and fast. Would she betray Zachary and the humans to save her own skin, or risk everything for this forbidden love? The fate of two species and two hearts hung in the balance. Mira sat on the edge of her bed, head in her hands as Zachary's words echoed in her mind. "I'm with the resistance, Mira, and we need your help." She looked up at him, eyes wide. "You? But how? Why?" Zachary sat beside her, taking her hands. "Because what the Ferengi are doing is wrong. We have to stop them, and you can help us do that." Mira pulled away, pacing the small room. Her thoughts raced, torn between the human she had grown to love and the duty that had been drilled into her since birth. "You're asking me to betray my people, Zach. I don't know if I can do that." "Your people are betraying everything that's good and right," Zachary argued, standing to face her. "Look at what they've done to Earth, to humans. Look at what they did to you and Tala. Is that really something you want to be a part of?" Mira flinched at the mention of her sister, still in Ferengi clutches. "Tala, Zach, we have to save her. I can't leave her with them." Zachary nodded. "We will, I promise. But first, you have to make a choice." Hours later, Mira's decision was made. With shaking hands, she handed Zachary a data disk containing all the information she had on Ferengi troop movements, weapons caches, and supply lines. "This is everything I know. I just pray it's enough." Zachary tucked the disk away and pulled her close. "Thank you," he whispered. "I know how hard this must be for you." Mira clung to him, burying her face in his chest. For the first time, she let herself imagine a future free from Ferengi rule, a future with Zachary. But first, they had to get Tala back. The resistance base was a hive of activity as Zachary and Mira planned their rescue mission. Armed with Mira's inside knowledge, they plotted to infiltrate the heavily guarded compound where Tala was being held. "I'll get you in," Mira said, pointing to the schematics. "But once we're inside, we'll have to move fast. Zorax's personal guards are ruthless." Zachary squeezed her shoulder. "We'll get her out, Mira. Whatever it takes." Under cover of darkness, Mira led the strike team through the winding corridors of the Ferengi stronghold. Shouts and blaster fire erupted behind them as they were spotted, but they pushed forward, determined. They burst into the cell block, Mira in the lead. Tala, where are you?" "Mira?" Tala's voice weak and confused. "What are you doing here?" But before Mira could reach her sister, a cold voice rang out. "I should have known you would betray us, just like your sister." Zorax stepped from the shadows, flanked by a dozen armed guards and Tala at his side, a blaster in her hand. Mira's heart stopped. "Tala, no. Please, you have to come with us. The Ferengi are evil, can't you see that?" Tala shook her head, eyes hard. "No, sister. It is you who are tainted. The humans have corrupted you, turned you against your own kind." Mira pleaded with her sister as blaster bolts flew around them, Zachary and the others battling Zorax's guards. "Please, Tala, don't do this. Come with me." But Tala raised her weapon, aiming it at Mira's heart. "I'm sorry," she whispered, "but my loyalty is to the Ferengi, to Zorax, not to you, not anymore." Tears streaming down her face, Mira lashed out, knocking the blaster from Tala's grip. Then Zachary was there, pulling her away as the resistance fighters broke through, human prisoners stumbling from their cells. "We have to go now," Zachary yelled over the chaos. Mira let him drag her away, sobbing, the image of Tala's accusing eyes seared into her mind. In the days that followed, Mira struggled to reconcile her grief and guilt. Tala was lost to her now, maybe forever. But she couldn't let that break her, not when there was still so much to fight for. With rekindled willpower, Mira threw herself into the resistance, sharing every scrap of knowledge she had to strike back against the Ferengi. Zachary was a constant presence at her side, his love and belief in her, an anchor in the storm. But their victories were hard-won and costly. Zorax and Tala pursued Mira relentlessly, branding her a traitor to be hunted down and destroyed. Mira knew it was only a matter of time before she would have to face her sister again. That day came sooner than she ever imagined. Mira watched in horror as a bloodied and beaten Zachary was dragged before Zorax, a triumphant Tala at the High Commander's side. "Did you really think you could defy us forever, sister?" Tala sneered. "Now you will watch as everyone you love is crushed before you." Zorax raised his blaster, aiming it at Zachary's head. Mira tensed, ready to spring, to fight to her very last breath to save him. This was it, the moment of truth. Her loyalty, her humanity, would be tested as never before. Mira took a deep breath and stepped forward to face her fate, and the final battle for Earth began. Zachary's world exploded in pain as another fist slammed into his jaw. He spat blood onto the cold metal floor, glaring up at Zorax through swollen eyes. "Where is the resistance base?" Zorax hissed, looming over him. "Go to hell," Zachary croaked. Zorax backhanded him, sending him sprawling. "You test my patience, human. Tell me their plans." Zachary struggled to his knees, his body screaming in protest. He thought of Mira, of the cause they fought for. No matter what Zorax did to him, he wouldn't break. "I've got nothing to say to you," he spat. Miles away, Mira paced the Resistance Command Center, her fists clenched. "We have to get him out." "It's suicide," a grizzled fighter argued. "The Ferengi stronghold is impenetrable." "Nothing's impenetrable," Mira snapped. She turned to the assembled team. "Who's with me?" One by one, hands raised. Mira nodded grimly. "Gear up. We move in an hour." Under cover of darkness, Mira led her team through the winding streets toward the looming Ferengi fortress. They slipped past the outer perimeter, using Mira's knowledge of Ferengi security systems. The first alarm blared just as they reached the inner compound, Blaster fire erupted from all sides. "Take cover!" Mira shouted, diving behind a low wall. She popped up, returning fire as her team scattered. A searing pain tore through her shoulder. Mira stumbled, clutching the wound. Blood seeped between her fingers as she struggled to focus. "We're pinned down!" someone yelled. Ferengi troops were closing in from all sides. Suddenly, a familiar voice cut through the chaos. "This way!" Mira's head snapped up to see Tala, her sister, gesturing frantically from a nearby doorway. "Tala?" Mira gaped. "What are you—" "No time," Tala yelled. "Follow me if you want to live." Mira hesitated for a split second, then nodded to her team. They sprinted for the door, diving through as blaster fire peppered the ground behind them. Tala slammed the door shut, panting. "I can get you to Zachary, but we have to hurry." "Why are you helping us?" Mira demanded. Tala's eyes hardened. "Because I've seen what the Ferengi truly are. What they do to anyone who opposes them. I was wrong, Mira. So wrong." Mira searched her sister's face, seeing genuine remorse. She nodded. "Lead the way." With Tala's help, they fought their way deeper into the stronghold. Finally, they reached a heavily fortified door. "He's in there," Tala said. Mira took a deep breath, then kicked the door open. Zorax spun, his eyes widening in shock. Zachary lay crumpled on the floor, barely conscious. "Step away from him," Mira snarled, raising her blaster. Zorax's surprise turned to rage. "Traitors!" he roared, glaring at Tala. "You dare betray your own people!" "You're not my people!" Tala spat. Zorax grabbed Zachary, pressing a blaster to his head. "Surrender, Mira, or watch your precious human die." Mira's grip tightened on her weapon. "I'll never surrender to you. Earth will be free." With a roar of fury, Zorax opened fire. Mira dove to the side, returning fire as chaos erupted. Tala and the resistance fighters poured into the room, blasters blazing. Mira rolled to her feet, charging Zorax. They grappled, trading vicious blows. Mira felt something crack in her side, but she fought on, driven by rage and desperation. Finally, she landed a crushing blow to Zorax's head. He staggered back, stunned. Mira raised her blaster, triumph surging through her. A scream of warning. Mira turned to see Tala throwing herself in front of her, taking a blast meant for Zorax. Time seemed to slow as Tala crumpled to the ground. "No!" Mira screamed. She fired, catching Zorax in the chest. He went down hard. Mira rushed to Tala's side, cradling her sister's head. "Why?" she choked out. Tala smiled weakly. "Because you're my sister. I couldn't let you die." Tears streamed down Mira's face as Tala's eyes fluttered shut. She felt Zachary's hand on her shoulder, offering silent support. "We have to go," he said softly. Mira nodded, her heart heavy. She rose, helping Zachary to his feet. Together, they led the battered rescue team out of the stronghold. Back at the resistance base, the victory felt hollow. Mira stared out at the gathering crowd, feeling the weight of all they'd lost. But when Zachary took her hand, she felt a spark of hope. He dropped to one knee, his eyes shining. "Mira, will you marry me? Whatever comes next, I want to face it by your side." Mira's breath caught. She pulled him to his feet into a fierce embrace. "Yes," she whispered. "Always yes." As cheers erupted around them, Mira knew this was just the beginning. The fight for Earth's freedom lay ahead, but for the first time, she truly believed they could win. The Resistance's victory over Zorax ignited a fire in the hearts of every human fighter. No longer content to hide in the shadows, they prepared to take back their world. Zachary stood before a map of Earth, his eyes scanning the glowing markers of Ferengi-controlled cities. Mira's hand rested on his shoulder as she pointed out key targets. "Their defenses are weakest here, here, and here," she said. "If we hit them simultaneously, we can catch them off guard." Zachary nodded, his teeth clenched with drive. "We'll need every fighter we can muster. This is our chance to turn the tide." As dawn broke, resistance cells across the globe sprang into action. In New York, London, Tokyo, and a dozen other cities, human fighters emerged from hiding to strike at Ferengi outposts. Zachary led the assault on the regional command center in what was once Washington, D.C. His squad moved through the ruins of the city, weapons at the ready. The first Ferengi patrol never saw them coming. "Now!" Zachary shouted. Blaster fire lit up the pre-dawn darkness. The patrol went down in seconds. Alarms blared as they pushed forward. Ferengi troops poured out to meet them, but Zachary's team was ready. They fought with the fury of a people reclaiming their home. Mira's voice crackled over the comm. "Zachary, they're bringing in reinforcements from the east. I'm rerouting Beta Team to flank them." "Copy that," Zachary replied, ducking behind a fallen pillar as blaster fire rained down. He popped up, taking out 2 Ferengi with precision shots. The battle raged for hours. Zachary lost count of how many times they nearly broke through, only to be driven back. But each time, he rallied his troops, pushing them to give everything they had. Finally, they breached the command center's outer defenses. Zachary led the charge, his blaster cutting down Ferengi left and right. As they fought their way deeper into the complex, a familiar figure stumbled out of a side corridor. Zachary froze, his blood running cold. Zorak stood before him, bloodied but very much alive. "You!" Zachary snarled. Zorax bared his teeth in a feral grin. "Did you think you could kill me so easily, human?" They clashed in a fury of fists and feet. Zachary's troops formed a perimeter, holding off the Ferengi forces as their leader battled his nemesis. Zachary took a vicious blow to the ribs, feeling something crack. He staggered back, gasping for breath. Zorax pressed his advantage, raining down blows. But Zachary had come too far to fail now. With a roar of defiance, he surged forward, catching Zorax off guard. His fist connected with the Ferengi's jaw with a sickening crunch. Zorax stumbled, spitting blood. Zachary didn't let up. He tackled the Ferengi commander, driving him to the ground. They grappled, trading brutal strikes. Finally, Zachary got the upper hand. He wrapped his hands around Zorax's throat, squeezing with all his might. "This is for Earth," he growled. Zorax's eyes bulged. His struggles grew weaker. Just before the light faded from his eyes, he choked out his final words. "Fool, it was all a trap." Zachary reeled back, his mind racing. "What do you mean? What trap?" But Zorax was gone. The implications hit Zachary like a thunderbolt. He grabbed his comm. "Mira, it's a diversion. They're going for HQ." "What?" Mira's voice was thick with static. "Zachary, I can barely hear you. We're under heavy fire." "Hold on," Zachary shouted. "We're coming." He turned to his battered troops. "Change of plans. We need to get back to base now." They fought their way out of the command center, commandeering Ferengi vehicles for the desperate race back to headquarters. Zachary's heart pounded as he pushed the alien craft to its limits. They arrived to find chaos. The Ferengi strike force had the base surrounded, pounding it with heavy artillery. Mira's voice cut through the din. "Zachary, thank God you're here. We're barely holding on." "I'm going for their command ship," Zachary said. "If we can take it out, we might have a chance." "That's suicide," Mira protested. "It's our only shot," Zachary replied. He gathered a small team of volunteers. "Let's move." They slipped through the Ferengi lines, using the chaos of battle as cover. Zachary led them to the towering bulk of the Ferengi flagship. "We need to get to the engine room," he said. "Plant charges and blow it sky high." They fought their way through the ship's corridors, leaving a trail of Ferengi bodies in their wake. Zachary took a glancing blow to the shoulder, then another to his leg. But he pushed on, driven by sheer willpower. Finally, they reached the engine room. As his team set the charges, Zachary held off a squad of Ferengi security forces single-handedly. "It's done!" one of his men shouted. "Let's go!" They ran for their lives, the ship's alarms blaring. They were almost to the exit when a stray blast caught Zachary in the back. He stumbled, crying out in pain. His vision swam as his team dragged him the rest of the way. They barely made it clear before the charges blew, sending the Ferengi flagship crashing to the ground in a ball of fire. The explosion turned the tide. With their command structure in chaos, The Ferengi forces began to falter. The resistance pushed back, driving them from the field. Zachary drifted in and out of consciousness, aware only of the battle raging around him. When he finally came to, he found himself cradled in Mira's arms. "Did we win?" he croaked. Mira's eyes shone with tears and fierce pride. "We did. You did it, Zach. You saved us all." Zachary managed a weak smile. "We saved us. Together." As the dust settled, they surveyed the devastation. The cost had been enormous, but for the first time in years, hope bloomed. The resistance had proven that humanity could fight back, could win. Mira helped Zachary to his feet. He leaned on her, battered but unbroken. "What now?" she asked. Zachary looked out over the liberated city, his eyes blazing with purpose. "Now we take back our world. All of it." It. Mira's world shattered as Zachary collapsed in her arms, blood seeping through his tattered uniform. She pressed her hand against the wound, trying to stem the flow. "Stay with me, Zach," she pleaded, her voice cracking. His eyes fluttered open, unfocused. "Did we win?" Before Mira could answer, a deafening explosion rocked the ground. She instinctively shielded Zachary with her body as debris rained down around them. "What the hell was that?" a nearby resistance fighter shouted. Mira's comm crackled to life. "Command to all units. We have a situation." She listened in horror as the report came through. Ferengi strike teams had seized control of antimatter reactors across the globe. The Ferengi commander's voice cut through the static, cold and merciless. "Resistance forces, you have 1 hour to surrender unconditionally, or we will detonate these reactors. Your planet will be rendered uninhabitable. The choice is yours." Mira's blood ran cold. She looked down at Zachary, his face twisted in pain. "We can't give up," he wheezed. "Not after everything." "But if we don't, they'll destroy everything," Mira said, her voice barely above a whisper. Zachary gripped her hand weakly. "Maybe we should talk to them. Find a way out." Mira stared at him, shocked. "You can't mean that. After all they've done?" "I can't watch you sacrifice everything," Zachary said, his eyes pleading. Mira stood, her face hardening. "No, we didn't come this far to bow down now. Humanity will never be slaves again." She turned to the gathered resistance fighters. "We have less than an hour to hit every reactor site simultaneously. I need our best operatives now." As teams were hastily assembled, Mira knelt beside Zachary one last time. "I have to go. Please, hold on." He nodded weakly. "Be careful." Mira led her team through the ruins of the city, every second ticking away like a bomb. They reached the reactor facility, a looming monstrosity of twisted metal and pulsing energy. 3 minutes until we breach," Mira whispered into her comm. "All teams, synchronize your watches. We hit them together or not at all." The wait was excruciating. Mira's heart pounded as she counted down the seconds. "Go!" They burst through the facility's outer defenses in a hail of blaster fire. Ferengi troops swarmed to meet them, their weapons cutting through the air. Mira ducked and rolled, taking out 2 Ferengi with precise shots. She vaulted over a fallen console, her team close behind. "Keep pushing," she shouted. "We have to reach the core." They fought their way through corridor after corridor, leaving a trail of destruction in their wake. Mira felt a searing pain as a blast grazed her arm, but she pushed on. Finally, they reached the reactor's central chamber. Mira's eyes widened as she took in the pulsing core of antimatter, barely contained by shimmering force fields. A squad of heavily armed Ferengi stood between them and the controls. Their leader sneered at Mira. "You're too late, human. One wrong move and we all go up in flames." Mira's mind raced. If they attacked, the Ferengi might trigger the reactor, but if they retreated, Earth would remain under threat. She made her choice. "Take them down!" Mira roared, charging forward. The room erupted in chaos. Blaster fire filled the air as both sides unleashed everything they had. Mira dove for the control panel, her fingers flying over the alien technology. A blinding light filled the chamber. Mira squeezed her eyes shut, bracing for oblivion. But when she opened them, she saw the reactor core powering down. They'd done it. As the dust settled, Mira staggered to her feet. Her comm buzzed with reports from other teams. One by one, they confirmed success. Earth was safe. Mira raced back to the resistance camp, her heart in her throat. She found Zachary where she'd left him, barely clinging to life. She took his hand, tears streaming down her face. "We did it, Zach. We won." His eyes flickered open, a faint smile on his lips. "I knew. You could. You showed me what it means to be human, to fight for freedom." "Stay with me," Mira begged. "Please." But Zachary's grip loosened, his eyes growing distant. "I love you," he whispered. "Never stop fighting." As his last breath left him, Mira felt something inside her break. She held Zachary close, her body racked with sobs. When she finally stood, her eyes were dry, her purpose unshakable. She turned to face the gathered resistance fighters, her voice ringing out clear and strong. "Today, we've won our freedom, but our work isn't done. We'll rebuild this world in Zachary's memory, and we'll make damn sure no one ever threatens our liberty again." The crowd erupted in cheers. As Mira looked out over the sea of faces, human and alien alike, she knew that this was where she belonged. Earth was her home now, and she would defend it with every fiber of her being. The road ahead would be tough, but Mira was ready. She had found her purpose, her people, and she would never let them down.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.